Hello everyone, thanks for clicking on to this little video. It's about the readings for the 27th Sunday of Year A, the Gospel reading. Just a little reflection on that. The peace of Christ be with you. Well, wild autumn has come to this part of the world, Cardiff, and we've been lashed with rain and winds, and it's so dark this morning, which I love. I love that autumnal darkness. I love being out in rubbish weather and coming back home because you have that pleasure of bowls of soup and mugs of tea. Yeah, my rock and roll lifestyle, deal with it. Growing up, several mugs of tea a day was a big part of our lives, as it should be. Drink a cup of tea in the right way, and in that place, the world has been saved. In my parents' tea caddy at home, there's an odd-shaped little spoon. It looks faded and worn, but there's something about it that I've always loved. I remember saying to my dad one day, "Hey Dad, what's the story with this spoon?" And he said, "Yeah, when I was a little boy, I found it in the school field. I showed it to my teacher and she told me it was worthless to just throw it away. But I didn't. I put it in my pocket and I took it home and I gave it to my mum." My dad's mum, my grandmother, died when she was quite young, a few weeks before I was born. But this spoon, this rejected little thing, stayed in our family, and it's still there when we make a cup of tea. The things we throw away. The things we throw away, the people we push away, what we reject. Big theme in our gospel story this morning. It's one of those really messy Jesus parables. This one's the parable of the ungrateful tenants. You know, it's one of those parables like they work like a Flannery O'Connor short story or an episode of Better Call Saul or Mad Men. It's just full of people who rage and sulk and do crazy, violent, grotesque things. Jesus loves to tell stories with such unpromising, broken characters. Anyway, at the heart of Jesus' story is the image of something thrown away. Jesus speaks of himself as a stone that builders pick up, look at, and cast away because they think it's worthless. Jesus self-identifies as a rejected stone. And in the story Jesus tells, it echoes a long Jewish Old Testament story in which God's people constantly go off the rails and lose the point. So God sends prophets, teachers, wise men and women to bring them back. The prophets and teachers and bearers of wisdom say to the nation, "This is not who we are. This is not who we're meant to be. We'll destroy ourselves if we carry on this way." And the warnings they brought were not about like the collapse of the space-time universe. They're about the historical damage, the damage we're doing to our lives right here, right now. They would use otherworldly language, but they were talking about what's happening in this world. And the prophets and teachers often picture their community as a vineyard. What kind of vineyard, they ask, does God want us to grow, to make, to build together? Now, implicit in this picture is the idea that the land doesn't just come from us. The vineyard is not ours, and neither is its harvest. No, all of it belongs to another. All of it. And we should never forget that. That's the implicit Jewish Christian claim in this picture. The world doesn't belong to us. The land doesn't just belong to us. It's not our personal property to do with however we please. And that goes for its harvest. And here's the scandal for modern readers. Our own lives too. Our own lives are not just about us. They belong to another. We belong to another. The one who puts soil under our feet, air in our lungs, and a sun above our heads. Life is not just about us. And in the ancient Jewish Christian story, the first one to hate this idea so much, the idea that my life doesn't just belong to me, it's not just about me. He hated it so much that he started a war over it. Well, his name is Satan. Better to rule in hell than to serve in heaven, says evil everywhere. If it can't just be about me and for me, let's pull the whole thing down. Anyway, in the ancient Jewish story, there was a recognition that all we have is given to us by God. It belongs to God, and it's not just our personal plaything. Our shared land is like a vineyard, and we're just the stewards. We're just the ones who are accountable to someone else. And what kind of vineyard does God want us to create? One that overflows with justice and mercy. That's the harvest that we owe, says Isaiah, the prophet. What kind of vineyard should we be building? One where God himself would feel welcome. So the story Jesus is telling this morning of the stewards, the tenants in the vineyard, is a very familiar one. But Jesus is not simply telling it to everyone. No, the passage begins with this verse. Jesus said to the chief priests and the leaders of the people. That's who he's talking to in this parable, not a general audience, but the powerful ones who run the vineyard and want to treat it as their personal property. As an aside, when understanding the words of Jesus, you always need to ask, who is the audience? Is it the poor and the broken, or the rich and the powerful? Because Jesus uses very different words when he's addressing those different groups. Jesus' words are very audience specific. So, in this story Jesus tells the chief priests and to the leaders, God sends, or the landowner sends, his servants again and again to them, saying, "Oh, what's going on here?" And they reject them and they stone them. And then eventually he sends the son. Surely they'll listen to my son. When the son comes to the garden, his questions, his actions, his very presence are so hated, so unwanted, that he, the son, is thrown out and murdered. Be very careful what you reject. Be careful what you throw away, says Jesus. You'll find out that the one you reject turns out to be the cornerstone upon which everything you are and everything you have rests. And in rejecting this son, like he's a piece of nothing, like he's an unwanted stone you can just throw away, you are doing so much self-harm. Because here's the thing, the rejected one is your source your judgment, your life, your salvation, and everything you have, and everything that you are, belongs to him. Here is the Jesus paradigm that he himself embodies. The world is going to be saved, healed, judged, and humanized by the rejected. One of the martyrs of the German resistance in the 1930s and 40s, Dietrich Bonhoeffer, said that in this world, God is edged out. God is unwanted. God is like the beggar, like a thrown away thing. God exists on the busy margins of our important lives, and those lives are all about us, personal sovereignty, make Jesse great again, In several places, Jesus refers to himself as the rejected stone. It's an image that overthrows me with its power. The invincible weakness of God disarms me and just captures my heart. In this rejected God, there is hope and healing and salvation. Hope for today, right now, comes from the reject God. May his rejected love and mercy save us all, especially from ourselves.